Picture this. You're the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. You've just won a massive election victory, you've got years ahead of you, and then a journalist asks you a simple question 5 times, and you refuse to answer it every single time. Not once, not twice, 5 times. What question could possibly be so dangerous that Keir Starmer would rather dodge it like he's in the Matrix than give a straight answer? Whether he'll rule out rejoining the EU in his lifetime. And folks, his silence is deafening. Labour is either planning the greatest political U-turn since, well, the last greatest political U-turn, or Starmer has suddenly developed a severe allergy to honesty. Either way, Brexiteers are absolutely losing their minds, and Labour might just be contemplating whether their leader has become more of a liability than an asset. Quick favour, if you're loving this political drama, smash that subscribe button. Over 94% of you haven't yet. It's free, takes literally 1 second, and honestly means everything to us. Cheers if you did. Right, back to the chaos. So let's rewind a bit, because context is everything in politics. During the run-up to last year's general election, Keir Starmer made a clear pledge. He promised he wouldn't take Britain back into the EU. Simple, straightforward, unambiguous. The kind of statement that makes Brexiteers go, well, at least he's being honest about that. But now, in an interview with The Observer, he was asked the same question 5 times. 5! And he refused to rule it out. Instead, he gave us this absolute gem of political evasion. We've stopped having the discussion about whether we should go backwards and pick over Brexit, which is political speak for, I'm not answering that question, but I'll say something that sounds vaguely relevant and hope you move on. Here's the thing about not ruling something out in politics. It's not neutral. When a politician refuses to rule something out, they're keeping the door open. They're maintaining optionality. They're playing the long game. And when that politician is the Prime Minister, and the thing he won't rule out is reversing one of the most significant political decisions in modern British history, people notice. Boy, do they notice. Now, Starmer insists he's pursuing a Brexit reset with Brussels. Closer ties, better relationships, smoother cooperation. All very sensible, very grown-up, very let's all get along. He's been clear that returning to the single market or customs union are red lines. Cannot happen, will not happen. Except, and this is where it gets juicy, actions speak louder than words. And right now, Labour's actions are screaming something very different from what their words are whispering. Enter Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy, stage left, ready to make everything infinitely worse. Last week, this arch Remainer was asked 7 times to rule out reversing Brexit. And guess what? He refused every single time. It's like watching someone being asked if they ate the last biscuit and they keep responding with, well, biscuits are nice, aren't they? 7 times. That's not evasion, that's a masterclass in making people suspicious. But Lammy didn't stop there. Oh no, he went full Remainer. He told the Newsagents podcast that it's self-evident that leaving the EU badly damaged our economy, took us out of an important marketplace, and created serious friction. Now, you might think those are just facts being stated, but in the context of refusing to rule out reversing Brexit, it sounds suspiciously like groundwork being laid, like he's building a narrative, creating a case, preparing the British public for a massive political pivot. And then, just to really hammer the point home, Lammy said that untruths were being peddled by those that thought exiting the EU would be a good thing, which is diplomatic language for calling Brexiteers liars. That's bold. That's inflammatory. That's exactly what you'd say if you were trying to relitigate Brexit. Because if Brexit was built on lies, then undoing it becomes a moral imperative, doesn't it? It's brilliant political positioning if you're planning a U-turn. It's catastrophic political messaging if you're trying to reassure people you're not. But wait, there's more. Lammy also suggested that rejoining the customs union would boost economic growth. He pointed to Turkey, saying they have a customs union with the EU and seemingly benefiting and seeing growth in their economy. Now, he did add that that is not currently our policy, that's not currently where we are, but notice the word currently. Currently. Not never, not absolutely not, currently. That's the political equivalent of saying, I'm not dating anyone right now when someone asks if you're seeing their ex. Technically true, but deeply suspicious. The backlash was swift and predictable. Cabinet Minister Pat McFadden was wheeled out today to do damage control on Sky News. Trevor Phillips asked him directly whether Britain would rejoin the customs union, and McFadden said, "Well, we've just conducted 3 trade deals this year, and that's a pretty big difficulty if you're going to join a customs union." Which is true. You can't have independent trade deals if you're in a customs union. That's literally the point of a customs union. But notice he didn't say, "We will never rejoin the customs union." He said it would be difficult. Difficult is not impossible. Difficult is negotiable. When pressed on whether Lammy was wrong, McFadden said Starmer has made things pretty clear in terms of the grand architecture of EU, by which he means the single market and the customs union. Pretty clear. Not absolutely clear, not crystal clear, pretty clear. In politics, qualifiers matter. When someone says something is pretty clear, what they mean is it's clear until it isn't. It's wiggle room disguised as certainty. So what's actually happening here? Is Labour genuinely planning to reverse Brexit, or are they just catastrophically bad at messaging? The charitable interpretation is that Starmer and his team are trying to improve Britain's relationship with the EU without actually rejoining it, and they're being intentionally vague to keep their options open in negotiations. The less charitable interpretation is that they're testing the waters, gauging public reaction, and slowly shifting the Overton window so that rejoining becomes politically possible. Here's the political reality. Brexit happened 8 years ago. A significant portion of the electorate has changed. Young people who couldn't vote in 2016 are now voters, and polling consistently shows they're more pro-EU than older generations. The economic data since Brexit has been, let's be diplomatic, mixed at best. And the political class, particularly in Labour, never really accepted Brexit emotionally. They went through the motions, but their hearts were never in it. So the temptation to reverse it, to go back, to fix the mistake, must be absolutely overwhelming. But here's the problem. Brexit wasn't just a policy decision. It was a democratic mandate. 17.4 million people voted to leave. They were told their vote mattered. They were promised Brexit would happen. And it did. To reverse that without another referendum would be political suicide. It would confirm every suspicion Brexiteers have ever had about the establishment, that they never really cared about the vote, that they were always looking for ways to overturn it, that democracy only counts when the right people win. And yet, Labour seem to be sleepwalking into exactly this trap. Every time Starmer refuses to rule something out, every time Lammy goes on another podcast to explain how wonderful the EU is, every time a cabinet minister uses words like currently and pretty clear, they're confirming those suspicions. They're telling Brexiteers, you were right not to trust us. The political calculation here is fascinating. Labour won the last election, but their vote share wasn't overwhelming. They benefited from a divided opposition and a collapsed Conservative Party. They don't have the electoral mandate to do something as massive as reversing Brexit. But there might be gambling that economic circumstances will force the issue, that if things get bad enough, people will beg them to rejoin, that pragmatism will trump principle. But politics doesn't work like that. People don't forget being lied to, they don't forgive being patronized, and they absolutely don't accept being told their democratic choices were mistakes that need correcting. Labour are playing with fire here, and they seem completely oblivious to the burns they're accumulating. The title of this video mentions Labour potentially replacing Starmer, and while that might seem dramatic, it's not entirely far-fetched. Leaders get replaced when they become liabilities, when their political judgment becomes questionable, when they start doing things that threaten the party's electoral prospects. And if Starmer continues down this path, if he keeps refusing to give straight answers about Brexit, if the whispers of rejoining get louder, his own party might decide he's more trouble than he's worth. Because here's what Labour strategists surely understand, even if Starmer doesn't. Brexit is done. The country has moved on. People care about the economy, the NHS, immigration, cost of living. They don't want to relitigate Brexit. They don't want another decade of arguing about Europe. They want their government to focus on making their lives better. And every time Labour politicians talk about rejoining, they're signalling that they're not focused on those things. They're still fighting the last war. The Conservative Party must be absolutely delighted by all this. They're in disarray, they lost the election badly, they're struggling to find their identity, and Labour has just handed them the perfect wedge issue. They're trying to reverse Brexit is a campaign message that writes itself. It activates every Brexit voter. It brings back the coalition that won in 2019. It makes the next election about identity and sovereignty rather than Labour's actual record. It's a gift. And Nigel Farage? He's probably cackling with glee. This is his dream scenario. Labour confirming everything he's ever said about them. The establishment showing its true colours. Reform UK will dine out for this for years. Every time they need to energise their base, they'll just play clips of Lammy refusing to rule out reversing Brexit. They'll quote Starmer's evasions. They'll point to Turkey and customs unions and currently and pretty clear. It's opposition research that creates itself. What's truly baffling is that Labour doesn't seem to have learned anything from 2019. Remember 2019, when Labour's ambiguity on Brexit destroyed them? When Boris Johnson won a landslide specifically